Alright, several days have passed since I shot the last footage on this Walter table, and I neglected to tell you this, and I wish I would have had that in that other video. And by other video I mean this was a temporary video, and don't look for it because it is no longer on there, but I had tremendous response on this. There was what, over 12,000 views and about 200 emails to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I cannot answer all of them. There were just way too many, but I had some good advice there. I had some, well, not so good advice, and so on. Of course, nobody listened to me. I said, please don't answer. It's kind of funny, unless you truly know, but people want to be helpful, and I do appreciate that. But let me tell you what I've done on that. And I'm pretty well stumped on that, and it was a failure. But the whole idea here is that I was trying to, there's a missing pin here, it's broken off. And the whole idea was I wanted to know how that was constructed, what it did when it got in there. And still not totally sure, but following some of the advice, what I did, and it was a failure, I took my little abrasive Dremel tool and I sawed right through the casting and made a slot into the broken pin. But I tell you, that pin was hard. I mean, it had to be Rockwell 60. But the piece almost instantly broke off. And now it's more jagged than ever. And I've essentially given up on that. I can always come back to that. But one of the responders gave me the best advice of all. He says, don't do anything. Leave it as it is. And that's what I'm going to do for now. But let me explain something else here now. That it did seem to free it up enough such that I can rotate this with this knurled collar, which I've had off, and that's been derusted. This has been derusted, but you know, it doesn't look very good because the satin chrome finish is pretty well shot on that, and it's kind of hard to read. But let me show you on this other little imported one that I got. This is just like a 6-incher. That it operates pretty much the same. There's the lock, and then with this pin you're able to operate the eccentric, which moves the worm in and out of the gear. So in other words, it freewheels now, and then when I engage it, it does not freewheel. Also, it allows you, the eccentric allows you to vary the amount of pressure, engagement, maybe I should say, to eliminate backlash, and so on. Now back to this one. Now watch the worm as I turn the eccentric. Wrong way, Corrigan. So that brings the worm into and out of engagement with that gear. It's just that it's a little tight, but that's something that doesn't need to be moved very often. Furthermore, this lock, whatever its purpose was, seems to be redundant. That is, here's also the lock. Tighten that up and you can't move it at all. And I had this apart and I just put it back in there. In fact, it's a two-piece arrangement, very similar, if not identical, to the quill lock on virtually all drill presses and on some tailstocks of the lathe. So as simple as that is, you know, really the problem is solved. So I'm not going to carry that any farther. But when I loosen that up, you can see it move in and out. Someone suggested, well, can't you remove the worm this way? Well, no, I can't, because that shaft, that's all one piece. Now, I'm not going to move the camera in, but there are some chisel marks or plier marks or tool marks on this piece right here. So this has been apart some time ago by a chisel and hammer mechanic, and I know some of you are calling me that now, but you know, I do try to be careful. And since this was scrap, essentially, that's all been apart before. These parts are all cleaned up. Matter of fact, everything is cleaned up now except the main casting. So what I intend to do is as follows. This is an oil reservoir in here. I don't know how much it holds, but perhaps a quart. I'm going to clean that out because it's still kind of nasty. Not real bad, but I'm going to use some thinner, clean that out. But one other problem I ran into, it's one problem after another, is that right here is a threaded hole. By the way, there's the tag. And the threaded hole had in it this plastic plug, which I believe was a sight glass. And the glass is missing, or plastic, whatever it was. That's a 12 millimeter. I just came from the hardware store. I was just going to plug it with a 12 millimeter extra fine, I believe it's a 1 millimeter pitch, but they didn't have it, of course. So I'm either going to modify this just by plugging it perhaps with silicone or something else, or, and I hesitate to do it, but drill and tap this out into a nominal English size that I would have around the shop. So my next step after degreasing this is to be derusting it, and I'm not even sure it's necessary, but I was going to put it into the bath of the solution I had over there, the citric acid, because it's pretty effective. But I had to spend considerable time with a wire brush cleaning this up, because if it isn't clean of just mechanical particles and so on, and grease-free, the citric acid doesn't work at all. So actually it's almost ready to paint now, but I think I will put it in the solution. I have to find a larger container, and I also have to plug this hole or the water would go in there, and I really want to keep this oily. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this because I've been working on this so many days, I don't remember what I said and what I didn't say, but the large central shaft that holds the thing together is missing. And I determined that about what it looks like from the parts lists that you guys provided me. And I had many different PDF files that you sent me, but none of them were this exact model. But probably Walters built everything similar, but this is not a tapered hole. It is not a Morse taper or anything like we expect on our American ones. So I'm going to stop now. I may not talk for a couple days while I let this soak, clean it up, and possibly even have it painted by the next time that I show you. Then I'll start to reassemble it. All these parts are clean, and but that's all I'm going to do on this, because I don't want to make it worse, and in fact it does work. And the other thing is, I may never actually use this table, because I got several other tables. You saw that little one I just showed you, as well as the Palmgren and one other one I have. So this is redundant, other than it's much larger than the other one. So I'll see you in a few days, and thanks for all the help and for watching my videos and the support. Okay, it's the next day, and I've been changing my mind here constantly, but what I've done since yesterday, I put the first coat of paint on the hand wheel, and it's looking pretty good. I just had to do that with an artist brush, and I'm using 20-year-old paint because you simply can't get good enamel anymore that is oil-based, thanks to you-know-who, and don't even get me started on that. And I don't want to hear any comments in their favor either. But what I've done here is to thoroughly clean this with a wire brush and thinner and so on, and I'm not going to soak this in the deruster, in the citric acid. It was not really all that bad, but if you look at the bottom, I've cleaned this up real nice with abrasives. It's a little bit rusty in here, but I don't care. Now take note of this bored hole here in this machine surface, and note that it is, if I can lay a straight edge across there, there's about 3/8 of an inch of space there, because there's going to have to be a nut or some kind of spacer on there. But this is now ready to paint, and I'm going to do that as soon as I hang up. I've cleaned out the inside thoroughly. You can see how nice and clean that is with thinner, and drained it, so it's now ready for a new batch of oil. So that's where I am right now. Now, one other thing here. As I put the table back on, and I didn't know this when I bought it, again, this was just a basket case, just a bunch of parts, but the main axle, I'm going to call it an axle or shaft, is missing. Now, of course, it has to have that. That's what it revolves about, that central axis. And according to what I see in the books, there's an axle with a bolt here, or a screw, that goes into this outer recess here. Again, that's not a tapered hole, it's straight all the way through, and I'm going to have to make an axle, and I think that this is it. And at the bottom I'm going to have, I think, a fine thread where I can put a nut on there to adjust the end play. So that's 40 millimeter. That'll be no easy job. Well, actually it's easy, it's just laborious. Then apparently it will be about finished and ready to reassemble. What am I looking here for? Oh, well, here they are. I was holding them all the time. There are only 6 of these, and they go right in here, and this is a 6 millimeter. I don't know how they managed to lose some of those parts, but you know how it is. So I'll put 6 of those in. But this head is just different enough, though, I know that's not something I'm going to find at my local store. I just completed the first coat of paint, and I renewed my aversion for painting, probably compounded by the fact that I'm using the cheapest brushes known to mankind, chip brushes, and the hair falls out of those faster than it falls out of my head. But it's going to do the job. It'll take a second coat, of course. And using this 20-year-old paint that had a scum on it thicker than the Lake Menominee in Wisconsin, that I had to scoop off, and I don't know how much thinner I put in there to try to make it halfway applicable, but that aside, I'll see you tomorrow when I apply the second coat. I'm getting antsy to work, and this paint is still tacky and wet, and I have a second coat to go, but I'm going to get started on the axle. So I've already turned down a piece here that I'll call my plug gauge, and that's 40 millimeter. And that's a pretty good fit. I should have had some oil on it. So that's, I'm not going to use this steel. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of tough. I don't feel it, and I'd like to have a piece a little bit longer because I want to cut this or turn it down about 4 inches long, and then I'll trim it to length. You know, I always make everything long. I think you know that by now. But this is what I'm going to use, and this piece came from David, my buddy down in near St. Louis, near Granite City. Gave me a whole bunch of steel a couple of years ago. And I'll turn this down. Now, granted, there's some keys in here, keyways, but who cares? And they will not machine all the way out. But it's not going to hurt a thing, and it's reasonably easy to machine. So let's see, where's my ruler? Including the table itself, I'm going to need about 4 inches. I'll put that in the closing lathe. Needless to say, I do not intend to show the whole thing, but I'll hold it by this end and support it with the center and this end, and just face it one more time and turn it down. And here I am on the closing lathe turning down that axle shaft. got a bit of an interrupted cut because of that keyway. I kind of like that actually. Sets up a nice rhythm and it breaks off the chips. No long stringy chips. Be sure and wear your safety glasses. This is a good illustration of how far the chips fly and how hot they are as they roll off the work. I've got a stop set, as you can see. And this will be my last pass. That's it. Okay, I took the last cut and I sure would like to test fit it before I take it out of the machine. That's a good practice if you can, but sometimes with a large piece it's impossible. And with the heavier lower half, it would be impossible. So, with the actual table itself, let's see if it goes on. Notice that I put oil on it. Never dry fit anything. Oh, great. Great. Little snug. Oh yeah, that's going to be just great. Now I can take it out, or I may go ahead and do another step on this, another element, another process before I take it out of the machine. But the hard part is done, and I didn't spoil the work because I really don't have any extra material here, so I'm a happy man. Is everybody happy? This is the bottom of the rotary table. Now, as mentioned before, there has to be some way to secure and take up the backlash, the slop, and adjust the length of the axle. So I'm going to use this washer. It's quite thin. I will have to bore this out, but I had this in stock, so that will lay on there, and I'm sure that's similar to the way it was built before. And then this is 3/8 thick, and laying my Lufkin straight edge on there, that's about how much space that I have to deal with for that nut, although the thread itself can go a little bit farther into the hole. It doesn't have to come right to the top, in my opinion. So I have room for, it's 9.5 millimeters, so I'm going to say that my nut will be about 9 millimeters. I think I will make it so that it'll have a couple holes on it for a, where is it here, to tighten it with this, and possibly a set screw to secure it with a brass plunger to not damage the thread. What is the size? Well, this stock, as I said, is smaller than, well, I could go with 1.5 inches, but I think I'll make the thread 1 7/16 National Extra Fine, which will be a .1437 and a half. And then I'll have to make the nut to fit, because that's not something I'm going to be able to find. You know, this is all custom made. So that's my game plan.